Maria Semple, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Dan.
Your book is awesome. Go Gentle. Everybody should read it. I was lucky enough to get an early copy because we're friends. And yeah, just let me start by saying congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting for me that it's out in the world now and people are starting to read it. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, I'll just speak selfishly that having talked to you throughout, you know, we met each other a couple of years ago, and just being able to watch you do this thing in the middle of a period of like real personal tumult on your side. Yeah, it's been very cool to watch it from soup to nuts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, to go from, I'm sure we met when I was despairing that the book wouldn't come together and probably also giddy that I was writing the greatest thing ever. It's all, you know, you cover every single thing when you're writing a novel. It takes, you know, years and you kind of feel all the emotions while you're doing it.
You had a sign that you put on your computer while you were writing it, and I think it said, "Dig it, baby."
Yes.
What was can you just unpack that?
Yeah, so I have a sign that says "Dig it, baby," and what it does for me is it basically tells me that if I'm not loving what I'm writing, I should just get up and walk away and just wait till I dig it. Like I'm not going to I'm not going to continue writing unless I fully dig it. And that the story of that is that many years ago, my former partner and I produced this show together, and he was doing a series of monologues, and he'd never done monologues before in his life, and he'd never performed. And I had gone to a Buddhist meditation retreat, a week of silence, and the only time we could speak was when a guy named Scott Kelman, who was an acting teacher, came in and did with us something he called the work. And it was this, I guess they were acting exercises. I'm still kind of unclear about what an acting teacher was doing in a Buddhist meditation silent retreat. But he came, and he was really reminded me of like Roy Scheider and all that jazz when he was playing Bob Fosse. He was just like a seriously cool cat, this guy. And he would just make us go really deep and kind of stand in front of people and look at them and kind of tolerate being looked at and then all the emotions that came up from it. So maybe there was some kind of Buddhist stuff. But so I really like this guy. And right before our opening night of this show, George, my ex, was kind of nervous about, for the first time, going up in front of an audience. And so I said, I think we should bring in this guy, Scott Kelman. I think that he's going to be able to help you. So Scott came in and watched George do these monologues. And George, stared at this spot, like high up on the ceiling, and just read and delivered the monologue, his first one. And then Scott said to George, "Who are you looking at?" And George said, "Well, I'm just looking above everybody because I feel like if I look at anyone, I'm going to get really distracted. Like there's going to be friends of mine in the audience and I don't want to have to look at them because I don't know how to do this." And then Scott said, "Okay, I want you to do it again. And this time I want you to look people in the eyes and I want you to dig it, baby." And I just really like that, the idea of just like look people in the eyes and this time dig it, baby. And so that's what I have on my desk. And the look people in the eyes is kind of important too, because it's about being sincere and wanting to connect and kind of taking a risk in that way. So that's kind of what I like to write by.
I love that. I didn't actually know the full story, even though you and I had talked about the sign over dinner several times. So it gives it a lot more color hearing the full story. And it feels to me like life advice, not only for the creative act, where, you know, we those of us who do creative work can fall prey, I think, to the sunk cost fallacy. You know, it's like, oh, I've been working on this for a while, so I got to finish it, even if it's a slog. I've been there. But also for like life, for all of life, you know, just whatever we're doing, let's actually dig it. Let's actually be here for it.
Absolutely. And just like a willingness to commit to things without any other voice in your head, which like the resentment and, there's a lot of Stoicism in that. Seneca writes a lot about it. And as you know, my book has a lot of Stoicism in it, but that's a really big thing that there's a lot of quotes about that I really like, which is just like, show up with just like pure gung-ho spirit. That's a modern word. They didn't use gung-ho back then, but that's what it is. And I do think it is it's very simplifying, in a way. You just kind of have to make the decision. Like, I get to do this. That's like a thing that I really like. Instead of I have to do this, you shift it to I get to do this. And that's like the kind of energy I really feel like one should bring to everything.
Do you never fall back into a place that and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I feel like too often I'm trudging through my to-do list, and so I'm not digging it, I'm just doing it. Does that ever happen to you? And if so, how do you pull yourself out of trudging to digging?
Well, to-do lists is not a good example because I really love getting shit done. Like I feel like in a way that's really what writing a novel is for me. It's just this like massive to-do list. So I really bring like fiendish, joyful energy to like tasks, and having to do anything. So to-do list is not the best thing. I think it might be more like working out or something, for me. But so anything that's just like planning, that it making decisions, planning, coming up with some kind of scheme, I find very creative, actually, like even a to-do list of, how am I going to get that done? Who do I call first? Oh, no, maybe I should call the other person first before this. That's like very happy for me to be doing all that. And so that's not really hard, but I'd say when I'm doing something I don't really like to do, I really try to think of it as character building, is like I'm going to go through this and I'm going to be better on the other side and I will be stronger on the other side and kind of grittier maybe on the other side. So that brings joy to it, I think.
So what I'm hearing as a through line in throughout this very young conversation, that we're just starting, is bringing cognitive reframes to stuff. Does that land for you?
Oh, very much so. And in fact, there's something that I've been that I will, I'm sure, talk about the Stoicism that I'm very into. But there was a quote that I was reading that it said that Stoics try to bring the most useful perspective to a situation. And I really like that because I feel like, yes, it's reframing. I feel like everything you can reframe. And I really like the word useful because it's so simple. And it's like, oh, yeah, there's like a useful way of looking at something and there's not. Epictetus says there's like two handles by which you can hold like a vase, I think is what he's referring to, hold something and hold it by the right handle. And so I do think that if that reframing is useful, it makes your existence better. And I think that what I really like about it is that it really, to me, activates my imagination. If something like bad has happened, quote unquote, or something, I don't get what I want, or there's a frustrating person, I actually think it's really fun to just get your imagination like fired up and just think like, oh, what's another way of looking at this? Again, then I'm into my like to-do list energy and I'm then excited about, I'm like psyched about the situation. Like, oh, there's a way I can reframe this to make it positive.
It is amazing the simple power of changing your perspective to alleviate dread, anxiety, anger, whatever.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of crazy that it's so available, at any given time, like nothing's keeping you from doing it. You're just 100% in control of it. It's just readily there for the taking, should you choose.
Yeah. I think the biggest obstacle is remembering. I think the biggest problem in all of whatever you want to call it, personal growth, self-improvement, spiritual development, whatever, the biggest problem is remembering. You can listen to Maria hold forth on Stoicism, which she's about to do, and then, you go through the rest of your day and you're pulled into the tides of forgetting, and then a ripe opportunity comes up for reframing and you just forget to do it.
Completely. And I think that that's why practice is really important, and I think everything, meditation is a practice, and I have a Stoic practice. And I think that without a practice, it's just it's just like something that makes you like all psyched to change your life. I used to always say God, my life is, I heard something that changed my life and now I've forgotten it. It's like, and I think that's what you go through if you don't just go through almost like the drudgery of practice, and that's what it's for, right? So you can internalize it, and that this stuff starts to become second nature, or the first, maybe not the first response, because sometimes that's just visceral, of just dread or shame or panic or whatever it is. But maybe like very quickly afterwards, you can go to the reframing thing. And it almost feels natural.
I love what you're saying. And yes, I've been humbled so often when taking the Buddhist or Stoic or psychologically wise approach is the eighth reflex on my part, after, a million other less constructive routes. But
yes, and
at least it's
and damage.
in there.
Yeah, and the damage is done, right? And now it's like, oh Jesus, now all these apology emails I have to write and all of this shit, And it's like, so I almost think on just a basic level, that's why you should do it. It just like saves you a lot of time.
Yeah.
I have a phrase that I like that I say, the low road always dogs you. It just makes life a lot easier not to have taken the low road, because it will stay with you.
Yep. Damn it. The lower road can be really fun for
oh my God,
a few delicious nanoseconds.
The best.
All right, Maria. So let's talk about Stoicism. So the protagonist in your new novel, which again is called Go Gentle and is phenomenal, is an expert in Stoicism and has written books about it and is a teacher of it. And this is based, as I understand it, in your own deep personal interest in Stoicism. So I'd be interested in hearing your story. How did you get interested in Stoicism, and what is it for those of us who are uninitiated?
Well, okay, so I got into Stoicism maybe 12 years ago or so, and I think I just read about it in the New York Times, and I read a book about it. William Irvine wrote a book called, I don't know, we can look it up in the show notes or whatever, The Art of Living.
He's been on this show, so I'll put the episode.
Right.
I'll put
I
a
think
link
it's
to
called,
that episode.
Okay, The Guide to the Good Life. I think that's his, William Irvine.
Great.
Okay, so it's just this really great kind of intro to Stoicism. And I read it and was really turned on. And I think that what turned me on initially was this perspective thing, but I'd say the basis of it, as I understand it, is that, there's things that you can control. There's things that you can't control. Your job is to only focus on what you can control, and that's virtue. And everything else you just cheerfully throw over to fate. And so that sounds, suspiciously like the AA Serenity Prayer, and a lot of other kind of systems. And it was formulated 300 BC, by the Greeks. And it's kind of crazy that it's so old, and it really is, only focus on what you can control. And, cognitive behavioral therapy is very much rooted in Stoicism. And so that's I think for anybody in any program, the first time you hear something like that, or let them write the mail, right? Just let it, whatever's going on, whatever people, whatever is going to happen in the outside world, it's not your business. Just concern yourself with yourself. It's really energizing, and it's a super turn on, and again, it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, my life is going to be different. Never, I'm now going to live this really happy, superior life. And so I started reading the Stoics themselves, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. And I just invented this program for myself because I didn't know anyone who was a Stoic or anyone who was into it. And so I just started every day sitting down and reading Stoicism and figuring out my philosophy of life and writing it down and doing these journal exercises that I kind of created for myself. And that's how I start every day. And it's really fun. It's actually very hard to turn myself away from it, and then I read some of the, I don't know, I just putter around with my Stoicism and get very happy and focused, and it's to me, it really helps. One of the things I do, it's clarify your purpose. That's a big thing in Stoicism, is just what am I going to do that day? What is today about? What virtue? And the word virtue is kind of problematic because it sounds churchy or whatever, but it's the four virtues. I think they're Plato, is wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. So it's not judgy. It's just about your own character. And so then I got really into it, and I'm still into it. It's kept alive in me for all these years.
So the turn on here, I just want to dig into this, is there's something, if I'm hearing you correctly, really invigorating and empowering about focusing on what you can control and letting everything else fall to the wayside.
Exactly. And the more you kind of study it, and learn about it, the more wisdom you see in it, and the more you really see that there's actually nothing outside of yourself you can control when you really start looking at it that way. So it really positively reinforces things. And then there's the reframing that's fun, that I think is good and easy. And then pretty soon you've gone through this with your meditation practice, is you'll be in a situation and you'll just kind of notice that you have just experienced it in a maybe even a slightly different way than you might have a year before, where it just doesn't stress you out or cause you anxiety. And you're like, oh, wow, I think something must have worked along the way. I don't quite know how, but there's been a shift, and I have a much more peaceful existence.
Tell me about this morning practice that you do. Can you just really walk us through, because it sounds like you've invented it, and so there isn't some workbook people can buy.
No.
So can you just give us the steps in case we want to replicate it for ourselves?
Yes. Oh, shoot. I wish I brought my Stoic book with me. I almost did. But so it's this little book that's now about 60 pages long that I've rewritten about 15 or 20 times, that I keep writing and improving and then going back to Kinko's and having them print up a new one and put a little coil binder on it and then do it, when it gets too marked up, I make a new one. And so I start out by writing down my philosophy of life, which is my philosophy of life is to bring my actions, desires, and so I say, no, my goal for today is to bring my actions, desires, and thoughts into line with my philosophy of life. My philosophy of life is virtue equals freedom. Virtue is the only good. Its pursuit is the only guarantee of abiding good cheer, secure joy, and a tranquil mind. So that took 10 years for me to write, okay? So that's my philosophy of life. And so I write that down every day to remind myself. And then I go to the four virtues, and I have, adjectives listed next to the virtues. And if it's wisdom, I'll go to one of my adjectives next to wisdom, which is sound judgment or something, because wisdom really is about just separating what you can control from what you can't control. And then justice is about, like, there's a lot of kind of metta in that. It's about friendliness, benevolence. It's not about like being a justice warrior. It's about just like being a good human being, to others. Then there's courage, which is like about work. And it's like love of work. There's a lot about like not falling in with the mob, about like moral courage, about endurance. And then under temperance, it's about kind of discipline, patience, speaking less, speaking kindly. So I kind of pick little subcategories of virtues that I need to work on that day, and then I journal all this out. I journal it out, and then it's like clarify my purpose, and I figure out what my purpose is that day. And then there's like a list of prompts. Today I did, I get to do this. That's what I did. I was like, I get to go and talk about my book with Dan. Like, this is really amazing that I get to do this. Like, I love Dan. Like, there's a podcast studio down the street in my publisher's house that's all set up. That's like all this good stuff is happening. And it's about not like, fuck, I got to go do this thing with Dan. And, it's like, because it could, I love you. But you know what I'm saying? We all can just slide into that. So it's basically just like reframing it. So it's really positive. And then I'll read the Stoics, and and then I read other philosophy. I'm reading some Rousseau now. I'm not trying to, but I enjoy branching out a bit. Then I'm like ready to write.
You know what can be good for your brain health? Learning a new language. Engaging in mentally demanding tasks like language learning helps build what's called cognitive reserve. Having that reserve can help your brain function better for longer, even as it ages. Which brings me to one of our sponsors today, Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone has been a trusted leader in language learning for over 30 years. Their immersive, intuitive method helps you naturally absorb your new language, no memorizing random vocabulary lists and no relying on translations. Instead, you learn by connecting words, visuals, and meaning in context the way language is meant to be learned. My mom, who was a big language learner and language aficionado, long used Rosetta Stone for her global travels. Now they've got this really cool feature called True Accent, which gives real-time feedback on pronunciation. So it's like having a personal coach. You can learn anytime and anywhere. Rosetta Stone fits your lifestyle with flexible, on-the-go learning. Ready to start learning a new language this spring? Visit rosettastone.com/happier right now and begin your language learning journey. This is so interesting. I just want to, for anybody who wants to do a bootleg version of this for themselves, it sounds like, roughly speaking, the exercise begins by restating what your life philosophy is, and then the next click deeper is how does that apply to what you're going to do today?
Yes.
And then you do some reading, what might be cheesily called inspirational reading of Stoic philosophers, et cetera, and then it culminates in some sort of journal prompt around how am I going to back to today? How am I going to apply one aspect of this very rich philosophical tradition to what's on my docket for today? Did I roughly restate that correctly?
No, that's exactly it. And then you're like, let's go do this thing, and what's really good is here's the important thing, is that I've set it up so that every single thing that I set out to do is 100% of my control. Like for instance, when I was coming down here, it wasn't like what I wanted to do today. It wasn't like, I want Dan to love me. I want to sell 1 million books on the podcast. I want to become like an influencer. It was like, I want to be on time. I don't want to interrupt. I feel like I have, so I'm going to go into a shame spiral. But try not to interrupt. Try not to swear. And those were like the only three things I really intended to do today. Were those three things, and I'm like maybe do a B plus or something. But it was like I wanted to be professional, like love of work. I wanted to show up with just like my full self. And so that's what's really fun about it, is it's not like you set out for the day to like write a best-selling novel. You know, it's because you can't control that. You set out for the day to do like a good day of work and to focus and to concentrate and not to just like waste your time on the internet and take naps and things like that. It's so that's what's kind of so fun about it. And that it's like you only desire what's in your control. That's like a really big thing. And that's like actually quite radical, is to shift. And that's why in the top half of my philosophy of life is it's like to line up my desires, thoughts, and actions. Those are the three disciplines, I think, of Stoicism. It's thoughts, desire, and action. But desire is really the big one, which would be a very good segue to my book and my character. But I feel like you want to keep talking about Stoicism so we can put a pin in the segue.
No. I want to follow your lead here.
Okay.
Because actually, I think it doesn't take us far afield from Stoicism, because your book your protagonist starts the book in Act 1 in
Yes.
this state of feeling like she's got it all figured out, and in many ways she does.
Right.
And
I just interrupted. There we go. So it's like now I've just okay. But you're a friend. That's the problem. Is I feel like if I didn't know you, friends apparently I steamroll over and I don't even care. That's like what it is to be a friend of mine. But so she basically has figured out that the key to life is to desire only what she has. You know, her name is Adora Hazzard. She's a recently divorced woman who's moved to New York with her teenage daughter. Very similar to my story, lives on the Upper West Side. And she has kind of figured out that if you desire what you have, then you're happy. And so she's set up this really fantastic life for herself. She's single. She kind of assumes that she'll never find love because she's kind of later in life, so she doesn't desire love. She desires the company of her friends, and she lives on the seventh floor of an apartment building, and a lot of other single women live in the other apartments, and they call themselves the Coven. And they just it's like the best, smartest people, her favorite people in the world, and they kind of share Netflix passwords and do things. And the idea is when they get old, they'll all just like take care of each other. And she has this, she's the moral tutor to a very wealthy, eccentric family who lives on Fifth Avenue, and particularly to their twin boys. And so after they go to their private school and they're wearing their uniforms, and they come back with all their really terrible, like status-obsessed values, she has to sit there and kind of talk them through it and try to like be and do moral training for them. And so she's quite, pleased with herself, I should say, which is kind of one of the digs against philosophers. It's like the arrogance of the philosopher. It's like the Christians, that's how they kind of, when Christianity came along, they would talk about how, philosophers who were kind of running rampant until Christianity were, believed that reason could solve everything. You didn't need faith. And so they were, they got a bad rap because they didn't believe in faith. They just thought, no, I have everything I need to solve all the problems. And so there was kind of an arrogance to it. And even though Adora is not particularly arrogant, I did just kind of write it just with a little kind of flavor of being pleased with herself. And so, so then what happens is early on, she meets a handsome stranger at the ballet, a man at the ballet. And he pulls her into this kind of international mystery. And and Adora kind of realizes that maybe like desire is nothing, is that she hasn't snuffed it out as well as she thought she did, that in fact there is something in like a flame that is burning inside of her. And this guy awakes it, and then this whole plot awakes it, and then we kind of go back and learn about what happened to her and why she kind of turned to Stoicism, and why like character became very important to her in the stories she'd been telling herself. And so it's a, my books are crazy. It's a pretty crazy plot. But it's very, very philosophy heavy, which is this aspect of exactly how this book is crazy.
Is it in the end something of a repudiation of Stoicism then?
It's kind of interesting is that I think that one of the things that's to me kind of interesting is that, Stoicism doesn't love chaos, and I kind of like chaos, like you say, oh, I love the low road, it's like, I mean, you don't really love the low road, but I mean, it's like kind of asking you not to be human, to not want to like lust or just like give in to your appetites or, to just like do the wrong thing and just like feel good, sending 100 angry texts and becoming completely unhinged in the moment. Like that is being human, And so I feel like there's certainly a denial of that in Stoicism, of a Stoic sage. And I think love is, it's, especially in the early stages, as I was writing about in my book, it's just by definition, chaotic, and you're unhinged, and you're, desiring what you don't have, and you'll do anything to get it and to keep it, and all of that kind of good, great shit, that love is. And so I think at the end she kind of, is still a Stoic, but maybe has modified it a little bit.
Where are you with Stoicism?
I love Stoicism, but I will say I'm also kind of now getting into Nietzsche, who really hated the Stoics, and he's pretty. He has his own set of problems, but there's something about just like the will, just the creative will that I think is just really fascinating. But I will always. I don't know that I will ever not do my Stoic practice, because it really does make me feel good. When it's just now a practice. I mean, I don't know if you meditate. Do you meditate like every morning, Dan? Do you start out the day?
It really depends on the day.
Okay. So I feel like, and I don't know if you, I certainly don't feel this when I meditate, which is why I rarely meditate, but I don't feel good when I meditate. Like I feel bad when I meditate, I will say. Sorry, I know this is a meditation podcast. We're supposed to be. But I mean, I just judge myself too much, and it's like, and I get anxious. I get like, have all this anxiety. And I think Stoicism kind of in a way for a practice just at least makes me feel good while I'm doing it. I'm not just like sweating with shame, while I'm doing it. Sorry, is this not a good thing to say on this podcast?
No, there's no such thing of a bad thing to say on this show. And it's not really, I mean, we talk about meditation and Buddhism a lot, but it's really about, we've done tons on Stoicism, we do sleep, and it's all aspects of life. Ken, maybe this is a little bit cute, what I'm going to say. And I do want to get back to Stoicism and your take on it and what you said about Nietzsche, which I need to learn more about because I don't fully understand. But just to respond to what you said about meditation, which is very common, the experience you're describing. And the cute part is I do want to reframe it if I can for you.
Please.
That might, and maybe this will be helpful. And this is not designed to browbeat you into meditating.
No, please,
help change the way you and some others think about it. The point of meditation is not to feel any kind of way. The point is to be cool with whatever you're feeling. And that leads to a kind of meta equanimity where you realize that whatever comes up externally or internally, you can handle it. because you've sat with it, you've sat with all the ugliness of your mind, and survived. One of my favorite little aphorisms, it's a coinage of Joseph Goldstein, who I know you're familiar with, my favorite meditation teacher, and he often tells people it's okay, which does not mean everything's okay. It just means it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling right now. And that creates a kind of equanimity that allows you to navigate all life's ups and downs with more skill. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
No, it does. And then you bring that into everything. Then there's just kind of a general benevolence that then you will greet the day and other people with, right? Once you kind of give it to yourself. I can really see that. I can see that. I get, I have the same issue you have, which is anxiety, is I feel like when I sit to meditate, I just like my heart races, and it feels like it wouldn't be racing if I weren't meditating. So why am I putting myself in this situation? Maybe you have an answer for that.
I do.
Okay.
A two-part answer.
Okay.
Two-part answer. One is, you can think about it like, before I give you the two-part answer, I want to signal again.
I know. You've never been the seller, the peddler. I know.
Okay. Thank you. Two-part answer. One is, you can think of it as a kind of exposure therapy. The anxiety is a prominent and a massively salient feature of your mind and my mind, and whether we meditate or not, it's going to be there. And so meditation is a way to kind of learn to work with this gnarly, inconvenient psychological feature or bug more skillfully. So that's one answer. The second answer is, there are types of meditation that I think go right at anxiety. In particular, you used this word before, metta, not M-E-T-A, like the name of the company that owns Instagram, but M-E-T-T-A, which is a kind of benevolence or friendliness. And that style of meditation, where you systematically envision certain people, send them good vibes, including yourself, which can be very cheesy, as you know. It was designed by the Buddha, it is said, as an antidote to fear. And so, and it makes sense. Love is kind of the opposite of fear. And so if you can just generate that skill of warmth and compassion, it pulls you out of spirals of fear and anxiety. So that's my two-part answer. Okay,
so I love the metta practice, okay? And it's like a drug. I just feel like a runner's high after I do it. So here's my question. If like my practice was to sit down in the morning and like listen, do you have it on your app? I'm imagining a metta practice. Okay. Yeah. So let's say I go to your app and I do metta every morning. That feels like cheating for me as meditation. Like I have this idea that I need to sit there and empty my thoughts. And if something goes by, watch it like a cloud or whatever. And then, but like, could I just every morning do a metta practice? Like if you guide me or another teacher, I'd like literally listen to a tape, but I'm not like alone quietly with my thoughts.
Yes, 1,000,000%. You can do exactly what you're describing. And just to say on the clearing your mind thing, that's impossible, and that's a pernicious misconception that people carry into their meditation practice that makes it miserable because they're trying to do an impossible thing. So there's no cheating. Another Josephism is whatever works. Do what works. If doing no meditation is what works for you, I want you to do no meditation.
Okay.
If doing some meditation of a specific variety is what works for you, then do that.
Okay. God, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to do like a 10-day metta practice because I love the metta practice, like I say. So that's already, like I'd go into it without dread. I'd be like, oh yeah, I get to sit down and like send good wishes to the stranger, which I love doing. So okay, good. Okay. And I'll report back.
But this kind of brings us back to your character and your story and also your personal story. Because we were talking before we went down this little rabbit hole about the limits of Stoicism. And I'm wondering if deliberately, the Stoicism's reputation, and I'm not an expert in it, Stoicism's reputation as kind of clinical and reasonable is missing the warm and gooey piece that is the inevitable result, I believe, of loving kindness practice.
Right. I mean, there's a lot to be said here, and you can pull quotes, and, like I say, justice is really about, friendliness and being compassionate and the difficult people that you give love to and all of that. But I don't really think that's what it's about. I think if you really wanted to defend Stoicism, that you could say, oh, no, it's in there. It's all in there. It is pretty cold, It is pretty, it's purely rational, and I think it is rational to love people and to be kind to people and to embrace difficult people, but it's all in Stoicism. It's like rooted in rationality. They say it's part of being human, so maybe that gets a little closer. That's what being a human is, and we have to get along with people, and what is it? What's good for the hive is what's good for the bee, or what's good for, I don't know, what bee is good for the hive, or whatever it is. Like, we all have to work together in a system. But no, it's not. Yeah, and I'm not an expert. I mean, I spend a lot of time on it, but I certainly don't hold myself out an expert. We should get Ryan Holiday on the phone, because he would have a good answer for this. But I think that that just about being purely loving, I'm not seeing that in the texts of Stoicism. Just like running around joyfully and giving love.
Yeah. Oh, so just to say about Ryan Holiday, he's been on the show several times. I'll put a link to my interview in the show notes. I'll put a link to my interviews with Ryan, but and I'm sure he would have a lot to say on this subject. But getting back to you and your main character, Adora, it seems like while you and Adora both continue to love and practice Stoicism, there is this addition of a little bit more messiness and warmth and wild love that you're innovating on top of it.
Yes, and just allowing that. And, I'll tell you something that I was writing. It was kind of one of the sparks for writing the book. Or there's this section in the middle of the book that's going into Adora's past, and one of the things that I really love about Stoicism and what I wanted to write about, and particularly as it pertained to me, is that I realized as I was studying Stoicism that I'd never thought about my personal character, which was really horrifying to me. That I was raised Catholic, but I feel like they didn't talk about character. They just talked about like miracles that Jesus did. And if you didn't believe it, you'd have to like say more Hail Marys. It was not a good priest I went to, apparently. But it was just like I didn't learn about like just being in control of your character and always doing the right thing and having like moral courage and separating that out from kind of status seeking and what society is telling you will make you happy, all the painted bounties, as we've called them before, of just, success and reputation and money and all that stuff. And I realized that as I started getting into Stoicism, that I had just kind of internalized all this garbage without really thinking about it. And so that's really what I wanted to write about, was kind of character, and that Adora kind of felt like she had bad character because she wanted kind of the wrong things. She was like I was. I conveniently made her a former TV writer in Hollywood as I was. And she was younger when she did it, as was I. But, she was chasing all these things that that society tells you are going to make you happy. And so I think one of my real turn-ons with Stoicism was just kind of separating out all of that stuff, questioning that. Really, the Stoics go really hard at that does not make you happy. That is like the path of suffering to pursue any of that. Even if you get it, it's going to make you miserable. And so that's just something I hadn't heard. That's like really fresh and new. If you're just sitting around mindlessly munching down, just the messages of society. It's like, oh, wow, there's another way. And I don't have to be like a toxic person, carrying this stuff around with me. And so that's kind of Adora's journey as well, like you see. And that was really fun for me to write about.
What was the term you used? Bainted bounties?
A bainted bounty. You know what? I used that. You don't remember at dinner once a few months ago, and you really liked it. So I was giving you another. Shot at it, Dan.
That's so embarrassing. My memory is like Swiss cheese.
No, it doesn't matter. It was so minor. No.
Okay.
It's what Seneca calls kind of the things that get dangled in front of you as things that the Stoics called them externals, that anything that's outside of your control, and often you desire them. But so the bainted bounties are basically like, riches or something that you think like, oh, it's bountiful, but it's like baited with with treachery or with negativity, and you think you're going for something that's going to make you happy, but it's actually it's something that you snap at, and yet it's.
So is it baited bounty?
B-A-I-T. Baited.
Okay.
Baited bounty.
Okay.
Baited bounty. Yeah.
So that I probably said this at dinner and don't remember that either.
Right.
But,
that's okay.
The Buddha talked about the terrible bait of the world.
Okay. That's
so
what it is. The baited
similar.
bounty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does he say? The bait of the world.
It's all the same stuff, if you're, he also said what the world calls happiness, I call suffering, and what the world calls suffering, I call happiness. And so it's all about the downside of desire. He's not anti-pleasure, but he describes it, and this is quite a simile here, as being like licking honey from the edge of a razor.
Ooh, okay, ouch, okay.
So there's we need to eat and reproduce and lots of, he's not saying we need a completely monkish, although he was a monk, life. It's that if that's where you're placing all of your hope for happiness and fulfillment, it is unlikely to provide.
Right. And that's what this is. The Stoics have one of my favorite terms, just because it's so clunky and it's so like such a bad translation, but I don't know how else to do it, is so I think it's Seneca mainly who says that you can want money and pleasure and reputation, okay? But that if you get it, you have to get it without attachment. You know what I'm saying? That you can, like, as long as you're not attached to it, you can have it, which was convenient for him because he was like the richest man in the empire, so he had to like come up with a workaround, right? About like, I'm sitting here in my robes, with all of my enslaved people around me. So how do I circle that square? But they call he puts externals, which again is anything that's not your character, into two categories. And he calls externals indifference, INDIFFERENTS, right? Indifference. They are like an indifferent. And so he calls them indifference, and he says that there are preferred indifference, which is like, comfort and pleasure and money. And then there's dispreferred indifference. And I just think that's a really funny term, is a dispreferred indifference. So when something really bad happens, I'm like, that was a dispreferred indifferent, that these things that happen, you can you still can want good things to happen to you. You know what I mean? And I think that that does allow for humanity because we are human. I want my book to do well, and I don't think that that makes me like a shallow, bad person, that I want people to read my book. I want it to get out in the world. But if I'm just like if like my whole sense of tranquility doesn't hinge on that, then, that's okay.
I don't eat a ton of meat, but when I do, I really want it to be high quality and responsible, sustainable, healthy, environmentally friendly. That's important to me. I imagine it's important to you. And that's what you get when you work with our sponsor today, ButcherBox. ButcherBox delivers over 100 premium protein options straight to your door, including 100% grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken, crate-free pork, and wild-caught seafood. It's all responsibly raised and thoughtfully sourced, so you're not guessing about what's on your plate. For over a decade, ButcherBox has led the industry with meat and seafood that's antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and independently verified. Because when it comes to fueling your body, quality isn't extra, it's everything. As an exclusive offer, new listeners can get their choice between chicken breast or top sirloin for a year or ground beef for life, plus $20 off when you go to butcherbox.com/happier. That's right, your choice of chicken breast or top sirloin for a year or ground beef for life, plus $20 off your first box and free shipping always. That's butcherbox.com/happier. Don't forget to use our link so that they know that we sent you. So it is to go back to the edge of the razor. Mm-hmm. It's a very narrow path that I hear you describing, which is you don't want to deny your humanity. You're a person who has spent several years working to create this beautiful book, so you want it to do well. You can't help that you want it to do well, and you're doing these morning rituals that help you sanely tune into the fact that if you want things that are beyond your control, that is a reliable wellspring of unhappiness.
Exactly. And so, so during the day, if I'm writing, like I say, I want to focus, I want to just try to do the best work I can. And then at the end of the day, I'm happy. And I guess that it is like a matter of faith. Or not happy, but it's like I've done what I set out to do, so I don't have this whole extra thing of like being miserable from not achieving that. And then, you put enough of them together, and then you've got a product. I guess that's kind of the faith that you have to do, that it's not just about wanting the success of it. I want to finish a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not pretending that I don't want to finish a book. I am not just like totally floating in non-attachment, and that's, I always find, I'm sure I've talked to you about this, is how do you like get shit done with non-attachment, right? How do you get through the day? And we both are accomplished people, and we obviously value finishing books, right? And having like crazy projects that we see to fruition. And that takes a lot of self-will, right? It takes a lot of determination and desire, and a lot of like fueled by fantasy, in my case, of just, and that's all like danger zone, but I think you do need that.
So how do you balance that?
I don't know. I guess I go back to my practice, but I really believe that like fantasy kind of kept me alive when I was a kid. I was a really lonely, kind of unhappy kid and unpopular, and I was fat, and the bullies would beat me up, and I would just really prefer my own company, and I would just create these really elaborate fantasy scenarios, of just usually involving celebrities being in love with me. But it was, these like very happy worlds that were just like highly determined. And I would just, have to be at school or something, or I would be like in my fantasy world in the middle of like literally dialogue. And then it would be like, hold that thought. I have to go to class, and then I'd like come back and pick up where I left off, you know. And I used to love like being alone. And I grew up in Aspen, Colorado, and I would always like to be the single on the chairlift, you know, like I always hated it when I'd be in the chairlift line. I always like kind of pretend I was with somebody and then just like get on the chairlift by myself, because it was just so happy for me to sit on this chairlift by myself. I would kind of hope the chairlift would stop so I could just sit there and just like live like very intensely in this fantasy world. And so I think that's what made me a novelist, you know. It made me able to kind of sustain my attention over a long time. It made me think, kind of create scenarios that were like extremely pleasurable to me. And I think that was a value that I bring to my books that I write. You know, I try to write like really nice places for people to go, even though it's like filled with ideas and suffering in some ways. Like generally, I really want to offer someone this like very kind of over-determined happy world that that they can live in for a while. So I'm not going to renounce kind of fantasy and that kind of fantasy life. I think it's good.
Well, to my ear, what you've done, this beautiful thing, I think the term for this is sublimation, I think, maybe like of taking this difficult aspect of your childhood, and then you had this survival mechanism of the fantasy, and now you've turned it into art that is a service to the world.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. I mean, that's a nice way of looking at it. Thank you.
One last thing to say as we wind down here about this balance of trying to do big and meaningful and important and beautiful things in the world without being overly attached. One of the biggest sources of wisdom in my life is the CEO of our little company. Her name is Tony. And we were in a meeting recently about my next book and planning a bunch of stuff, and I think she could sense that I was getting revved up and crazy. And she said, just keep in mind that good enough is pretty amazing. And I was like, I want to get that tattooed on my forehead. Like, good enough is pretty amazing. And if this project is just fine, you know, is good enough, you know, it doesn't have to like put a dent in the universe, it's going to be pretty amazing for the people who read it, for my company, for me, for my family. And that's sanity inducing for me.
Very much so. Yeah, I totally agree. Is that and that, you know, something recently that's similar that I think you can definitely relate to, because I know you've been working on your book for a while, is that, and I haven't written a book for 10 years. This is my first book in 10 years. So I'd taken a lot of attempts, you know, abandoned novels, tried this one and it didn't work out, and abandoned it, tried other things. A friend of mine recently who's having a book come out at the same time mine is, at lunch said to me, what do you want from this book? You know, we were both like really pre-pub, and she's like, what do you want from this book? And I thought about it, and I thought, I want to have written this book. Now it's so, I'm so happy I wrote the book, that everything else is gravy, you know, and right? I mean, don't you feel so proud, Dan, that you're going to have written this fucking book finally?
Yes, I need to do a better job of occupying that space, because it's very easy for me to get into the realm of not being indifferent and trying to control things that I can't control. But but by doing I don't know, I think by working hard and doing your best work, that does really set you up for being able to let go a little bit. You know, it's the only way to do it. Yes. The Buddhists call it non-attachment to results, that you can work incredibly hard on a book or your child, as both of us are parents, or anything, any project. You can work really hard on it. That's what you can control. But then you release it into an entropic universe, and you have to do your best to be non-attached. Yeah, definitely. Before I let you go, can you just remind everybody of the name of the book, and then also your past books, just for people who want to take a deeper dive? Oh, thank you. So this book is called Go Gentle. It's behind me. Go Gentle.
It's a novel. And the other books that I've written, the one that people would know more than the others is called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? I think that was your gateway book, Dan, into my universe. I wrote a book called Today Will Be Different and one called This One Is Mine. And so Go Gentle is my fourth book, and feel very fortunate to be able to be talking about it. So thank you.
Where'd You Go, Bernadette was my gateway, but I had met you before that. I met you and didn't know anything really, and
Right.
I just liked you. And then I was at a book sale at my kid's school and saw that there you go, Where'd You Go, Bernadette was available. So I bought it, read it, and loved it, and then we stayed being friends.
Exactly.
That's
No,
the end
that
of the
was
story.
a really awesome text that I still remember getting from you. That was like a year later, like, hey, by the way, I read that book. I was so happy. That was very nice of you. Thank you for texting me. Yeah.
I sent a similar text after I read Go Gentle, which in my opinion is even better. But Where'd You Go, Bernadette was amazing. This is even better. So you just keep getting better.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Maria, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Dan. This was fun.